Alright, so we're going to be creating this intro sequence. We're going to go over a bunch of different tips and techniques to create this all within DaVinci Resolve. Before we get started, I also did want to say I do have a polished version of this intro. If you wanted to save time and download that, you can. There's a link in the description. Alright, so to get started with this, there are a couple of elements that I did have to get outside of DaVinci, like the images that I want my intro sequence to have. I also grabbed a couple of different textures, as well as the brush stroke that I'm going to be using to create this. So let's just bring everything in. So we're just going to drop it right here. Oh, hello. What happened? Okay, there we go. That was a little weird. So here are the images that we'll be using. And then over here, I took pictures of the screen filter on the dryer to get lint. So that's this. It's just a little bit of a texture that we can overlay on the images to have like a little bit of grit. And then I also crumbled up a piece of like printer paper and took a picture of that as well. And we'll be using that. So to get started, I'm just going to make a Fusion comp here. And there's a couple of things with these images that we'll have to look at first. So we'll go right over into Fusion. And the first thing that I have a problem with is if I bring one of these images in, one of the ones that I shot with my camera, and what you'll see is the size of these images are very big compared to our project. So if we take a look at our project that we're working in, it's only 1920 1080. So these are way too big for our project. And when you bring large images like this into Fusion, depending on your resources, your machine might struggle. And because it's not really needed to have all of these pixels, we're going to chop these down and make them smaller images to work with. So to easily do that, I'm just going to grab a background in, and I'm just going to connect that image to the background. By default, this background image, if we come into here, it's going to have auto resolution. So that's just going to state the parameters here. And because it's the background of the merge, it dictates the resolution size. So that's why what we have here. So if I view this now, this is the same image, the lint. I can come into this merge and I can then just resize it however I want it to fit. Now I did notice that like up here, there's a little gap, so I don't really want that showing. So I would say something like that. Right, so that is going to be our image that we want. So to get this image now to be this resolution, I'm just going to save this. So you could do this in, you could take this image into like a Photoshop or something like that, but I just wanted to keep it in this program and make it as easy as possible. The other thing that I wanted to do is I want to kill the colors that are here. So there's like a color cast that's on here. So I'm going to kill the color. So I just bring it into a color corrector, and then the saturation, I'm just going to reduce that, and let's view that here. Now it's just a black and white image. That's kind of like the best because we just want the luminance in it. So I'm just going to right click, save image. And now I'm going to go to where I have the rest of this project saved, which is here. And I'm just going to put in textures, and I will make this texture lint 1080, just so I know that this is the 1080 image, and we'll do a JPEG, save. Okay, so now that one's saved. The other one that we need to do is one of these, the paper, the crumbled up paper. Obviously these are way too big, so I can just connect this right into here, and then we just view it over here. It's perfectly fine. I'm gonna go into this merge, and then I can, resize it up to fit my needs. So where it kind of is perfectly fine. All right, so right click, save image, and make this paper 1080, and make that a JPEG. Save. Okay, so now we have all of our images the right size. So I'll just come back over to Fusion, and now I want to bring those in. So I'll just bring that folder that I created. Here we go, our two images. Okay, so the next thing is we have to make the animation for the brush stroke to go across the frame. Instead of creating this each time for each set of brush strokes, we're going to create 2 or 3 different variations of this and then render that out and have just the file instead of always computing the same exact thing within Fusion. So let's do that quick. So let's just go back over into Fusion. We're going to stay in this same comp here just because this is like a throwaway comp just to make these couple of elements. And I'm going to add in that brush PNG. And this is all it is, just a little brush stroke. And then I'm going to add in a background. And then in this background, I'm just going to take the alpha and bring it all the way down so all of these are 0. So this frame is just completely clear. And then I'm going to take that brush stroke and drop it on top of the background. So this is where we're currently at. And now within this merge, we can move the brush stroke itself because all this stuff's getting laid on top of the transparent background. So I can move this around to animate this brush stroke. So all I'm going to do, let's just zoom in a little bit. I'm just going to make this kind of flat to go across the top. So we just have a nice little wipe going across the top. So something like, I don't know, something like that. So I'm going to come over here so it's off screen. And let's just come into, like, let's say frame 2. Sure. Make a keyframe here and then maybe frame 15 and bring this over. Currently we're working in a 30 frames per second timeline. So this will be like a half a second to wipe across. So there's one wipe. So if we just view that, we have one wipe, and then we obviously need to fill up this frame. So we could add in another merge and add this in. And then for this second one, we can just bring it down a little bit lower to wipe. Maybe we'll go the other way around. So let's flip this around. Whoops. Flip this around, something like that. Maybe we'll have it wipe the bottom and then one go through the middle or something. So come over here, whoops. I am at the wrong spot to keyframe. Let's move our playhead back. So that first one starts around 2 seconds. So it starts kind of like, let's have this one maybe start right here at 10. And we'll keyframe here. And then this one will be a little bit shorter. So it'll come across. I'll wipe across like that. Now, there's something that you'll notice with these brush strokes. As they go across, so this bottom one's more apparent than the top one, we're wiping, right? The brush stroke, as it's wiping across, it's uncovering over here. So it's kind of like if you took a paintbrush and you wiped across, you would have like a trail. It wouldn't just, you know, the paint wouldn't disappear here. So the next thing we have to do is we have to add that trail. So there's a cool effect that you can use. We'll hit shift and then we'll hold down shift and hit spacebar, and we'll just type in trail and then get the trails, hit enter. And now in here, if we view this, come over and let's just reset this. Now when it goes across, it adds that trail. So as an element moves from one frame to the next frame, all it's doing is it's going to stack the frame. So the first frame, the second frame gets stacked on that, the third frame gets stacked on that, the fourth frame gets stacked on that. So that's kind of like what's happening here. So we'll just reset it. So each time you just have to hit this reset. So there we go. And let's add before this, so like right here, just add another merge, and we'll get another stroke, and then we'll wipe across the middle here. So let's come back. Let's just view it here. So we're just going to view this one instead of seeing the trails, so I can actually put this together. So that one's coming across. So I would say maybe like right in here, we'll have it start to move. Where is it? Right there. Okay. Keyframe here, and then maybe by 25, we'll have it fill up this whole thing. So now we should get, let's come to the beginning, take a look at this one. Should be filling the whole frame pretty much, except for a little bit up here. And that's perfectly fine because then we can start to see like layers and stuff like that. So that's our first one. So now we have this element. Now we have to render this out. And we have, as you can see, if I reset this, we have a transparent background and we want to maintain that transparency. So to do this, we're just going to grab our output and connect our output up, right? Just because we want this to go back onto the timeline. So now that we have it going back to the timeline, we can come right over to deliver since it's already sitting on the timeline. As you can see here, obviously this, you wouldn't see much in here because you're not going to be able to see transparent values here. It's just going to all show up as black. Perfectly fine. Now let's navigate to where I have everything saved. and I will just make this brush 1. So this is the brush stroke 1, and we'll go to individual clips, which enables us to export with an alpha channel. And we will go to, there's a couple of different codecs that have the alpha channel, but I'll just do DNxHR. We don't need it to be that high quality, so I'll just go down to standard quality version, and then just make sure you have export alpha. So now that's all done, add to render queue, and I'll render that out. So once that's done, I'll take it in and I'll show you quick what that would look like. So let's go back over into Fusion, and I will grab this over here, and we'll just put it right in the master. Sure. And then if I bring it into here and we view it, there we go. Now what we'd be able to do with this is we can use that as a mask. So because it has the alpha there, we can use it just as a normal mask. There are ways to make masks with different values, like the brightness values and different reds and green channel values. But currently, this is probably the easiest way to explain this. I'll connect this up to the mask effect, so on the background. And then let's change this color to a color that we'll use, like let's say this cream. And we'll bring it up, and now we have that effect there. So it's like we're painting it on. So that's kind of how this effect's made. So we have one so far. Now we just need to make, a couple of different variants of this. So we can just kind of copy all of that. Let's just drop it down here. I guess we could have copied that too. We'll connect that up. And now within these 3, I can make different animations. So let's just view this one. Here are our 2 keyframes. Let's just reset this whole thing, and we'll just start from the beginning. And you can kind of have these go any which way you want. So even if this brushstroke doesn't make sense to go up like that, it's going to be leaving a trail. So it'll look like just a really big brush was used. But I'm going to kind of go maybe on an angle like that. Have it come over here. We'll probably do like the same kind of timing. Come up and go like that. So there's that one. Then here, I'm going to make let's view the second one. I'm just going to make this one, let's do it bigger. Doing it bigger, we're probably going to have to move this front keyframe over a little bit. So like that. And then we have this third one here. The third one's actually, I'm just going to reset this whole, oops. Did I really just do that? Let's go back and let's reset this third one. And then the third one, I'm going to have it wipe maybe from this side over just to clear up everything there. So keyframe here, then come over a couple of frames, I guess, and then have it fill in that area up there. Now, let's come back to the beginning and see what everything looks like. So there we go. Kind of like, it's an okay one. We'll use it though. And we're going to do the same thing, copy it over in here. Just going to reset that, come back over to deliver, and we will just make this brushstroke 2. All the settings are correct. Add to render queue, render that quick. And I'll make one more variant of it. All right, back over into Fusion. And we'll just copy all of this, bring it down. I'm actually just going to have this do like just two different things, wipe, and I'll just reset both of these. And for now, I'll just view the first one, and we are just going to view the first one. There we go. All right, and we will just start over here. Actually, I'm going to do it from this side. Start here, come in maybe 3 frames. Like that. We're going to fill up this whole top part, so I might need it to be a little bit bigger. So maybe something like that. Come over to here, bring this back just a little bit. There we go. Okay, that's the first one, and then we will do the second one. Now let's actually view it. Here we go. And make this a little bit bigger to fill up that whole spot. Bring it over to here, keyframe, bring it over, And that should fill up the whole frame. Let's come back to the beginning, take a look at this, reset. There we go, good enough. All right, now we're gonna grab that media out, connect this up, come to the beginning, refresh, deliver, and we will name this brush 3. Add to queue and start rendering. Now there is one other thing that I also wanted to add, and it was like these dots. Now the dots are definitely, if you didn't render out any of this stuff, you know, your computer would probably be fine, but these dots will definitely slow your computer down because of the nodes in which we're going to use to create that whole dot effect. So I'm just going to grab a background, and we're going to grab an ellipse tool, and we're going to connect these up. Let's view this, and in the ellipse tool, just going to go expressions, connect this over, just so that these are both the same. So I can just use the one to shrink this down, and we'll bring this down and make this a very small dot like that. Let's just make this white so it's easier to see for now. Okay, and I'm just going to leave it centered, but bring it over just like that. And coming out of here, I'm going to grab a normal duplicate node, and we'll view it here. And I'm going to add, let's do 60 copies. And then each copy is going to reduce by 0.02. So it's like that. And then in the duplicate node, I'm just going to move them across. I might have too many copies. Let's reduce some of these copies. Let's reduce this to 50. Okay. Just want a little bit more spacing. I think I cut one off, but whatever, it's fine. Okay, so now that we have that, what I'm going to do is I want this to move now to the bottom. So I'm just going to put a transform in. And the reason why I'm putting a transform in is because for this duplicate node, I made a size difference, and that is changing the whole frame, the size, and not just that one little dot. So if I was to bring this all down, so let me come into my ellipse. If I was to bring this down and do that size difference, they're all gonna, you know, it's gonna be making the whole frame smaller, which would bring it in, and you'll get this really weird effect. So I don't really want that. So that's why I had to add this in here. And now on this one, I can bring this whole thing down like that. And now that it's down here, I can get another duplicate, right? And we'll view this, and then let's do like 25 copies and see what this looks like. And we'll just bring them, whoa, hello. We'll bring it up. That might be too much. Let's just do 20. And we'll just bring this up. So this was going kind of out of control. So I come over here, and when you click in here, you can move it. But if you hold down control, you have like finer adjustments. So I can move it real nice and subtly like that. All right, so when I was initially, I'm gonna bring this down just a little bit. There we go. And then bring this up. Okay, so I was initially, I made this and I was like, I don't really like that too much. So what I ended up doing is I grabbed a merge, and this to connect the merge to the background. Obviously that's just going to be, you know, what you see. And then I'm going to connect it also to the foreground. And so the background's being laid on the foreground, but currently they're both the same. So all I did is I just flipped it. So it goes to the other side. And then I just zoomed in a little bit and I subtly moved it just so that they're kind of like in the middle like that. So that's kind of what I did. And I'm going to come all the way back to here and reduce this size down a little bit. All right. So that's all I did. And now I have this kind of like grid effect. And I'll add more effects because this looks way too clean. Like all these dots are perfectly clean. I'll add more effects onto here to make this kind of like grungy a little bit. All right, so now that we did that, I'm just going to take this part right here, right click, save image. And now I'm just going to put in dots, and we'll make this a JPEG because we currently have transparency there and we want that to show up. So I hit save. So if I was to play this, you can see just playing this here, I'm at 1.2 frames, right? So utterly shit, because it's doing all these calculations for these two duplicate nodes. So instead of having to deal with that, I just have the same exact thing here, right? And so if I view just this and I play it, boom, 30 frames per second, same exact image, right? So that's kind of why I've been making all of these things, just to make it super simple. Okay, so now I kind of have all of my elements all together. So let's come back to the edit page and let's put all this stuff in a folder, the stuff that we really don't need now. So now we can start to assemble our project. So we have a Fusion clip here. We can just right click on it and then reset Fusion comp. And that's just going to get rid of everything that's currently in there. And I believe that one was set up for 5 seconds. Perfectly fine. We'll just jump right in and we will just close this stuff here. And now all we have to do is grab one of our images. We'll bring our image in and we will view it. And as you can see here, it's kind of like cropped a little bit. So if we don't want that crop there, we can come over and then we can come into here and set this to center crop, no resizing, and it'll get rid of that. So there we go. Next, we want to bring in our brushes. So I'll just grab a brush 1 and let's grab a brush 2. And let's grab a couple of backgrounds. These are going to be our colors. So I'll just drag it over here. And let's change this color up. Let's do like a cream. And then for the second color, I'm just going to grab a color off of here. So let's grab like, I don't know, like maybe that blue. All right. So now this is currently where we're at. So this one is our brush 1. We'll just connect this into here, and this one is going to be our brush 2. Connect this into here. Then we'll connect these both together, just like that. Now if we view them over here, and we play them, we will have our wipes, right? Looks okay, but let's offset them a little bit. So I'm gonna come into my keyframes here, and then we have our kind of like a little timeline, and currently we have this one set up as the background indicated by the yellow. You can also hover and you'll see down there the little tooltip, and then this one's the foreground. So the background is obviously going to be behind whatever the foreground is. So the foreground is that cream, the background's the blue. So all we're gonna do is the foreground one, let's delay it a little bit so they're not kind of coming on at the same time. So let's come to like, let's say frame 10. And let's come over to our media in. So this is media in 2, right here, media in 2. We'll just grab right here and we'll delay this by, let's say 10 frames. And then in this background, we'll change the global in to 10. It'll also bring that back. And now if we view this, we have the one wipe and then the other one wipe over, right? So that's kind of how this whole thing is built. So now that we have all of this, right, we need to add on the image. So I'm just going to grab the out and connect that up so we see our image here. Obviously this image is a lot bigger. So I'm on the media in, we can resize this. Let's zoom in a little bit so we can see that. And we can resize this to fit the frame. So like, let's say like that. And now I need to add one of the brush strokes to have the animation of it coming on. So to do that, I'm just going to grab the first one we used. I'm just going to hit Control C, Control V to paste it. And I'm going to connect it into here, which is going to control what's coming in here. And the reason why I'm not connecting it up to this image is because this image is just a lot bigger. It's not cut down. So we're going to bring it in, and then we have to just find a spot where we want the wipe to happen. So this looks good. So let's bring this over, let's say right there, and then the media in will bring that over as well. So now let's play this, and there we go. That is our animation, right? So it wipes on, and that's kind of it. Then all we would have to do is just connect this up just like that. And now we're back on the timeline, right, with that whole animation. So now let's do it for the rest of the images. We just made a whole bunch of stuff. So all we would really have to do is take this and copy it. So hold down Alt and go up, right? And then let's see where the animation's kind of like settled. So let's have it, you know, maybe like the 2-second mark right here, 2 seconds. I'll just bring it over and we'll go back into Fusion. If you wanted to leave the animation the same, all you would really have to do is just this media in is, so you can see the view.jpg. We would just get rid of that and bring in something else. So bring the climb in. The only thing is if your images are all different sizes, you're just gonna want to come into here and then just do the resizing to make that fit. And then that's all you would have to do. If you want to change up the animations a bit, you're just gonna have to change the different brush videos that you used and then have them you know, work accordingly. So if I bring this in, we see that the timing here is at 10. So for this one, we would just bring it into 10. There you go. And I can maybe move this one down here. What's the timing on this one? This one starts at 25. So come into this one and change this to 25. And we don't need that. We'll connect this up like that. Get rid of that. There we go. And now we have this one. It's animation. So let's take a look at this. Oh, the media in, we also have to bring this into 25. Kind of confused me there at first. So there we go. All right, so wipes across and then it reveals it. There you go, perfect. So now if we come over to the edit page, one thing that you'll notice is because we always preserve that alpha channel, because the two Fusion comps are on top of each other, you would be able to see through, so it almost looks like they interact with one another. So here, if we take a look here, we have our one, and then once we get up to here, we can see that this one is, you know, writing over the other one. So that's kind of like a pretty cool thing. So all we would really have to do now is just keep adding to this. So I'm just going to do 2 more images quick, and then we'll just jump back to where we were. One of the other things that you can do to kind of make it look like there's a lot of variance between clips is you can just take any of the masks, hit Shift Spacebar and type in transform, and then you'll get the transform. And if you just view that over here, you could manipulate that mask however you want. So you could just, you know, hit these 2 buttons and it'll flip it, so the animation will be backwards, left to right, and then upside down. So it'll look like it's, you know, a completely different animation. And you could add it to like whatever you want it, and it's pretty easy. All right, so here I have my 4 comps with different animations. We can also add another thing here at the beginning. We don't really have anything here, so we could maybe set up something so that everything is sitting on top of. So I'm going to do that quick. I'm just going to take all of this, move it up 1, and I'm just going to add in another Fusion comp here. I'm not actually going to be using this Fusion comp, but I'm just going to use it to create a actual image, and then we'll just throw that image in there. So coming over to here, I'm going to come to that Fusion comp that's blank. And in here, I'm just going to grab the different textures that I had. So let's grab the lint, and yeah. So we'll grab the lint, and I think I'm going to add in color. So I think I'm going to go with like a darker blue. I'm going to take that lint and put it on top. So if we view that here, and I think we can go into screen and bring it down. That lint doesn't have much contrast, so if I just view it here, there's not much contrast there. So I'm just going to get a brightness contrast node, think I'm going to increase the contrast, make it a little bit brighter. Let's actually view this node that I'm working on. Maybe like that. There we go. There we go. So now I can actually see that texture there. And then this is the image that we're coming out with. I think I want it to be a little bit darker. Something like that. So now I have that image. I'm just going to save that as a JPEG. BG as background. Whoops, that's not JPEG. There we go. Save. Come over. And then I can just really get rid of that particular node. And I can just bring in the image. The image is going to be a bit lighter weight anyways. So I'll bring that in and we'll just drop that down here. So now it has that image to like write over. And if there's any blank spaces, it'll always have that image to write over. So yeah, that looks good. And now the next thing that I can add in is we didn't add any of the dots in. And I think I want to add a little bit of camera shake, and I want to use the paper to overlay everything. So let's say that this is the animation that we want. It looks pretty good. You could also add another one of these if you wanted to and use like maybe like a logo. Because if you have it at the beginning of a video, like an intro, you could also have like your logo there. So that's just an idea. So all I'm going to do now is take all of this and I'm going to right click and make it into a compound clip. So it just drops it all into one clip. And now this clip itself, I can go into Fusion and now I can manipulate how I want this effects to add on top of all of this. So I'm just going to bring in that texture, the paper texture, and I can drop this on top like that. And then let's go to screen, and let's also add in a contrast node and make this more contrasty. Maybe bring some of this down. Something of that nature. And then also I'm going to put in a transform. And I'm just going to zoom this in. So size, I'm going to make this 1.1 just to zoom it in a little bit so then I can shake it around. So to shake it around, I'm just going to, here's the center. This is what actually moves it, right? I'm just going to right click, modify with, shake. And then over here on the shake, these are the values that can be added over onto the positioning. So over here, these numbers, it's just the min and max. So it starts out at 0.5 as the center. So all I'm going to do is put this for the minimum, we're going to go to 0.48, I believe. Let's try that. And then for the maximum, we're going to do 0.52. So you got 0.02 on each side. And then smooth this, that's how jerky or smooth it is when it goes from value to value. But I think that looks pretty good. So now we add it, a bit of texture. If I wanted to, I could also add in the lint onto here. And then let's just add contrast and we'll add that lint on top. We'll screen that as well. Let's view that lint. Man, I should have made this brighter at the beginning. There we go. Oh geez. Contrast. All right, we're getting kind of crazy on these values. All right, let's cap the values. So the clipping of the values, as you can see here, we're kind of like affecting this, and that's because if you come over here, we can see that we have like negative values. If we clip it, everything will just go down to 0, and it won't ever go negative or too high. so you don't get those weird effects. All right. I think that is looking a bit better. And then in here we can also drop down the blend a little bit. As you can see down in here, we're starting to have that texture. So if I brought this over, it's nice and clean. Bring this over, we have like that bit of texture going there to make this almost seem like it's paper, right? So that's kind of how we would do that. And now, if I come back over to the edit page, now we could really just render this out. And we would have this, so let's render it out and see what it looks like. And for this, I'm just going to go back to single because we don't need that alpha channel. And you can pick, you know, whatever you want. And we'll just type in here test 1 and then render that out and see what it looks like. And as you can see, because we did everything separately and didn't bring a whole bunch of stuff into Fusion, and then we also made all of the different bits and bobs that we were using to affect everything, we rendered those out as separate entities. Our render times are, you know, significantly higher than if we were to make one project in Fusion, bring all of these elements in, don't pre-render them out, and then like the calculations would just be a lot more. So as you can see here, we're getting, you know, anywhere from 11 to 30 seconds. And if we had all of those elements and it was doing calculations for every frame for each piece, we would be down to like, you know, 1 second, half a second per frame. So yeah, so that's kind of the greatness of, you know, making the different elements. Now, don't get me wrong, when you're first starting, when you have like an idea in your head and you're starting to work on your idea and you're not exactly sure where, you know, it's going to take you, you're not going to know to, you know, make all of these different elements and to pre-render them out. But as you start to get more comfortable, you start making little pieces here and there, and you're like, oh, you know what, maybe I should just render that out because it's taking a bit longer than it would normally do. So like when we were looking at the dots that we for some reason didn't even use here, but when we were looking at those dots, just to render out the dots, we were only getting, you know, like 2 frames per second, compared to once we have that image, then we can, you know, do 30 frames per second, no problem, you know, even more if we were throwing it onto something. So all right, so I'm just going to bring this in our little test. And if we view this quick, there we are. Now, you know, you could make them longer, shorter, change the distance between the different elements, you know, retime it. I personally, looking at this, I think like the first one's perfectly fine. Switching between these is a little too quick. So I would add a little bit of time in between there. So to do that, if we were still working on this, this compound clip isn't mushed everything down. You can still go into it and work on it. It's just a different timeline. So how we would do that is clicking this little button here, we can open up multiple timelines. You can do it without this, but it's easiest to do it this way so you can jump back and forth between timelines. Now if we right click here, we can go open in timeline, right? So now if we open in timeline, what this is doing is it's now opening another timeline. And this timeline that we have open now is the clip that's right here. So we could just come into here. All of these animations are perfectly fine with their timing themselves. It's just that the 2 second mark that we had here is too long. So I'm just going to hold down shift and move over 1 second, and then just move this over 1 second. And then on here, 1, 2, 3, I'm going to take both of these, move these over. And then here, 1, 2, 3. Whoops, I think that was 4. 1, 2, 3. And move that over. So there we go. Now that, you know, everything's retimed, I can come back over to this timeline and let's just re-render it quick and see what it looks like. 2, render, let's go. While this is rendering, you could also, look at the shake and say, oh, that's too much or too slow. And then you could, change the smoothness to how jerky it is, or if it's moving too much, like laterally, you can reduce the min and maxes to fit your needs, or you can make it more. So let's bring in that second one. Here it is. We'll view it full screen. Take a look at it now. Much better, much better. We can actually see each thing. We could throw some audio in there to make it a little bit better, because just looking at this is not too much. The only other thing I would do is really change the shake. I think it's a little too much. So we're on that the Fusion comp here, or wow, I keep saying that. We're on the compound clip now. We could then go into Fusion, and then we have that transform here. And I would probably just make this like 0.9 and make this like 0.1. And then maybe increase the smoothness up a little bit. But yeah, then when you have the clip here, I mean, you can do it just because the render times are so short. You could just add audio clip in here. You don't have to have this pre-rendered out. You could just add the audio clip in here and then, go through and render, and then you'll get the audio with your video. But I think that kind of concludes this one. Like I said at the beginning, I have like a kind of like a flushed out version that I am selling on my website. So if you want to take a look at that, support me. If you want that one, you can grab that as well. But you have all the tools to, to make it and to fit your needs. But yeah, with that being said, let me know in the comments what you guys think about this one. If you have questions about DaVinci Resolve, you can go to my Facebook group. There's a ton of people in there. Ask your question. If someone has prior knowledge on whatever, the situation is that you're going through, they'll offer you a little bit of help. But with that being said, my name's JR, and thanks for watching.